I still remember the exact moment everything changed, not because it was loud or dramatic at first, but because of how quietly it started. It was one of those moments where someone looks at you and decides who you are without ever asking your name. You know what I mean? The kind of look that says, "I've already figured you out and you don't belong here." That look followed me onto that plane, and it stayed with me right up until the second it stopped mattering at all. It was supposed to be a routine flight, coast to coast, nothing fancy on paper. My wife, our 2 kids, and me, we'd saved points for years, planned the trip carefully, told the kids to behave because, yeah, first class is different, and you respect the space. I grew up learning how to make myself small in places where I wasn't expected, so I drilled that into them gently, not out of shame, but survival. Keep your voice down. Say, "Thank you don't give anyone a reason to decide something ugly about you." That's the world we live in, whether people like to admit it or not. The woman across the aisle decided about us anyway. She was already irritated when she boarded, snapping at the flight attendants, correcting how people spoke to her, adjusting her designer jacket like the cabin existed just to admire her. When she saw us, her expression changed just for a second, but long enough for me to catch it. Her smile tightened, her eyes scanned us like we were a problem that needed solving. I'd seen that look before at the country clubs, hotel lobbies, school meetings, always followed by a question that sounded innocent, but wasn't. "Are you in the right place? Do you need help? Whose guest are you?" She didn't bother with subtlety. "This is first class," she said loudly, not even pretending she wasn't talking about us. I paid for peace and quiet, not a social experiment. My son stiffened beside me. My daughter looked down at her book, pretending she hadn't heard. My wife squeezed my hand, the signal we've perfected over years. Not here, not now. And for a moment I did what I'd done my whole life. I stayed quiet. I told myself it wasn't worth it, that we'd land in a few hours and this woman would disappear forever. But entitlement has a way of escalating when it isn't challenged. She complained about our kids even though they hadn't made a sound. She complained about how we dressed, about how we looked, about how we supposedly changed the atmosphere. She called the flight attendant over and asked straight-faced if there'd been a mistake, if perhaps we were supposed to be seated somewhere else. Economy, she didn't say it directly, but it was right there between the words. The attendant handled it with grace. Bless her calm voice, professional smile, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. She knew where this was going. I did too. At some point, the woman turned toward me, leaned slightly into the aisle, and said, "No offense, but some spaces are earned." That one landed differently. I looked at her, really looked, and felt something shift inside me. Not anger, not yet, more like clarity. I realized I was done shrinking. Done teaching my kids that silence is the price of admission. I smiled, slow and polite, the kind that unsettles people who expect defensiveness. "We earned our seats," I said. "Same as you." She scoffed. "Sure you did." That's when she made her mistake. She asked for the purser. She raised her voice. She said words like standards and clientele and people like you. The cabin grew quiet in that specific way where everyone pretends not to listen while catching every syllable. My wife looked at me, concern in her eyes, and I nodded just slightly. It was time. I didn't argue. I didn't insult her back. I didn't have to. I simply reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. See, what she didn't know, what she never bothered to consider, was that I wasn't just another passenger. I'd spent 20 years building something from nothing, sleeping in my car, missing birthdays, betting on myself when no one else would. I'd invested early, taken risks, failed publicly, succeeded quietly. And one of those risks years back had put me in a position most people never see coming. I dialed a number from memory. The woman laughed when she saw me on the phone. "Who are you calling?" she sneered. "Your lawyer." The line picked up. I spoke calmly, like I was ordering coffee. Explained the situation. Explained the disruption. Explained that I didn't feel comfortable continuing the flight under these circumstances. There was a pause on the other end, then a voice that knew me well enough not to ask stupid questions. I handed the phone to the purser. That's when things started moving fast. The woman's confidence wavered just a crack at first. She demanded explanations, demanded names, demanded respect. The purser listened, nodded, then spoke words that changed the air in the cabin completely. "Ma'am, due to your behavior, we are escalating this to the captain." She laughed sharp and brittle. "You can't do that. Do you know who I am?" I thought about answering, but decided not to. The truth was coming, and it didn't need my commentary. The announcement came 20 minutes later. Calm voice, practiced tone informing everyone we'd be diverting due to a security issue involving an unruly passenger. Groans rippled through the plane. The woman turned pale. She looked at me like this was somehow my fault, like accountability was something I'd invented just to spite her. When we landed, law enforcement boarded. Real law enforcement, not airport security with clipboards. They didn't argue with her, they didn't negotiate. They asked her to stand, and when she refused, they helped her up. She screamed about lawsuits, about status, about injustice. My kids watched silently, absorbing a lesson I never planned to teach them this way. As she was escorted off, she twisted around and shouted at me, "You think you've won?" I met her eyes. "No," I said quietly. "I think you've learned." The plane took off again without her. But the story didn't end there, not even close. By the time we landed at our destination, videos were already circulating. Different angles, different captions, all capturing the same thing. Entitlement unraveling in real time. People had opinions, lots of them. Some defended her, said it was harsh, said cancel culture had gone too far. Others saw exactly what I saw, a lifetime of unchecked behavior finally meeting resistance. A few days later, I got a call from someone high up at the company she ran. They wanted to talk. Not about the flight, not exactly, but about the future. Turns out, public meltdowns don't sit well with shareholders. Contracts were being reconsidered. Boards were meeting without her. And opportunities, the kind she'd never imagined losing, were slipping away fast. I didn't push, I didn't threaten, I didn't gloat, I just listened. Months later, I ran into her again, not in the air, not in luxury, but in a place so ordinary it almost felt poetic. She was working, really? Working eyes-down uniform on no entourage, no special treatment. For a split second, she didn't recognize me. When she did, her face flushed and she looked away. I thought about saying something, about reminding her, about closing the loop. But I didn't. Because the truth is, the victory wasn't seeing her fall. The victory was watching my kids sit taller. Speak freer, understand that they don't have to accept someone else's version of their worth. The victory was realizing that dignity doesn't come from silence, and strength doesn't always look like shouting back. So here's my question to you. Was that justice, or was it too much? Did she get what she deserved, or did the punishment outweigh the crime? And how many times have you seen something like this happen, maybe smaller, maybe quieter, but just as real? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I really want to know where you stand. And if you've ever been judged before you were known, share this with someone who needs the reminder that belonging isn't granted by permission. It's claimed.